Hello and welcome. You're watching the Newsroom. Breaking news coming in this hour. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz is urging the European Union to move forward on using frozen Russian assets, saying the bloc is actively examining his proposal. Speaking in Berlin alongside Cyprus's president, Merz said that the idea is now with the European Commission and is being discussed by both bilaterally across the European Union to see whether the member states can take a common path. Meanwhile, Merz also confirmed that the European Union is preparing another sanctions package against Russia in the coming weeks, stressing that Europe will not ease up on maintaining and even increasing pressure on Moscow. The comments come as EU leaders look for new ways to sustain financial and political pressure on Russia, with debates intensifying over how far the bloc should go in repurposing Russian state assets. Let's in fact listen in to what Chancellor Merz had to say.
Regierung und wir werden in der Europäischen Union ein weiteres Sanktionspaket vorbereiten für die nächsten Wochen. Und insofern werden wir nicht nachlassen, unseren Druck auf Russland aufrechtzuerhalten und auch zu erhöhen. Wir haben eine sehr intensive Diskussion über die Nutzung der Vermögenswerte. Sie kennen meinen Vorschlag, den ich dazu unterbreitet habe. Dieser Vorschlag ist im Augenblick Gegenstand der Prüfung in der Kommission. Wir sind aber auch in beständigen bilateralen und multilateralen Gesprächen mit verschiedenen Mitgliedstaaten in der Europäischen Union, ob wir diesen Weg gemeinsam gehen können. Wir prüfen da alle Optionen. Der Präsident hat mich gebeten, mitzuhelfen, Schritt für Schritt die Teilung der Insel zu überwinden und auch mitzuhelfen, mit unserem guten Verhältnis zur Türkei erste Schritte zu unternehmen, in diese Richtung zu gehen. Wir haben über verschiedene Optionen gesprochen, wie das gehen könnte. Wir haben über einen sehr konkreten Vorschlag gesprochen, den ich mit Interesse aufgenommen habe.
Now more breaking news coming in from Europe. Germany's Defense Minister Boris Pistorius on November 14th announced that the nation will contribute at least 150 million euros, which is about $174 million towards a new US weapons package for Ukraine. This was announced as a pledge that follows the meeting with counterparts from Britain, France, Italy and Poland. Pistorius confirmed that Germany has already funded a previous 500 million euro Pearl package for Kiev and was making progress on further support. The European Union's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas also emphasized that Ukraine will need continued funding in the coming year. She highlights that the use of immobilized Russian assets as a possible solution to sustain Ukraine's defense efforts. Now, Kallas also stressed that such measures would send a strong message to Russia. Let's in fact listen in to both these leaders.
Sie wissen, Deutschland beteiligt sich ebenfalls am sogenannten Pearl-Mechanismus. Wir finanzieren also Waffensysteme, die nur in den USA erhältlich sind, von der Prioritized Ukraine Requirement List. Systeme, die eben nur in den USA produziert werden und welche die Ukraine dringend braucht. Prominentestes Beispiel sind die Patriot-Systeme und vor allem die Flugkörper dafür. Wir haben uns gestern kurzfristig darauf verständigt, hier in Deutschland uns an einem weiteren Paket zu beteiligen. Ich hatte gestern Kontakt mit Mark Rutte, dem NATO-Generalsekretär, und wir haben uns bereit erklärt, auch an einem weiteren Paket mit mindestens 150 Millionen Euro dabei zu sein. Auch da gehen wir weiter voran. Wir haben als Deutschland gerade im Oktober noch zwei neue Patriot-Systeme, zwei zusätzliche Patriot-Systeme geliefert. Es wäre sogar noch schneller gegangen, ohne den Shutdown in Amerika, wo wir die Zustimmung brauchten.
Ukraine will need more funding next year. There are several options, but using immobilized Russian assets is the most clear-cut way to sustain Ukraine's defense. It is also the way to show Russia that time is not on their side. Supporting Ukraine is a bargain compared to the cost of Russia's victory.
Now, more updates from the region. We are now learning that a Ukrainian energy worker, Alexander, describes the ongoing struggle of patching up his power plant after relentless Russian missiles and drone strikes. Now, the plant, frequently targeted in Russia's campaign to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure, faces constant damage, and workers are restoring the plant before the attacks. On November 14, strikes killed at least 8 in Kiev and Odessa. Now, despite the risks, workers, including a 53-year-old shift manager, Vladimir, remains committed, referring to themselves as superheroes for the resilience. Now, with the winter approaching, energy workers brace for further hardship as the war enters its 4th year. Let's listen in.
Цей досвід, ми могли б без нього жити, без цього досвіду, цивільна професія. Ну, нас винудили його набувати. Тому, можливо, хтось боїться, можливо, хтось підбадьорює своїх колег. А боятися неможливо, самі розумієте, страшно. Якось тако всі згуртовуються, роблять свою роботу і друг за друга тримаються. Це яка кількість цих проводів, і як їх можна сховати, закопати. Можливо, можна. Можливо, зараз нові станції саме так і проєктуються, да? Але ж наша станція строїлась в мирні часи і не для війни, скажімо так.
Привикнути до того, що прильоти, бомблять, летять ракети, летять шахеди, я думаю, що ні. До цього привикнути неможливо. Не знаю, яким це треба бути, чи супергероєм, хоча я вважаю, що в мене хлопці мої супергерої, тому що вони були разом, сплочені, виконували свою роботу, друг друга підтримували. І навіть коли вже були прильоти, і ми сховалися під котлом, тому що ми не могли йти в бомбосховище, ми знаходилися на своєму робочому місці. Ми друг друга підтримували, підбадьорували, були разом. Це наша, як то кажуть, улюблениця Марфа Васильівна. Кожен називає її по-своєму. Хто Руся, хто мала, хто як. Кличе її. Вона відзивається до всіх. Вона, до речі, пережила не один прильот.
Now in Brussels, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has met with the Belgian newly Prime Minister Bart de Wever as the European Union continues to wrestle with how to use the frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. The meeting follows von der Leyen's renewed push, insisting that tapping the interest generated from Russia's central bank assets held in Belgium is the most effective way to finance a proposed €140 billion reparation loan for Kiev. Meanwhile, Belgium remains opposed to warning that the move could trigger legal retaliation from Moscow and expose Brussels to long-term risks. The Commission has floated alternative options, yet maintains the frozen assets mechanism to offer the strongest financial foundation. Now, the talks highlighted a growing divide within the European Union, even as the bloc searches for sustainable ways to keep Ukraine's war efforts funded. Now, moving on to the United States, the United States President Donald Trump has issued a Truth Social post demanding that the Department of Justice and FBI investigate convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's alleged connections with prominent figures, including former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, and JP Morgan Chase. Now, Trump's posts come ahead of a crucial vote in the US House of Representatives, where the lawmakers will decide whether to require the Justice Department to release all the unclassified files related to this case. Now, Trump, who has faced scrutiny over his past friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, has denied any knowledge of Epstein's abuse and trafficking activities. He criticized the Democrats for pushing the Epstein controversy once again and targeted the weak Republicans who might support the release of the files. Now in Sweden, a tragic accident in central Stockholm has left several people dead after a bus plunged into a bus stop. Police confirmed multiple fatalities. Now, while rescue officials say that 5 people were directly affected, with others injured in the impact. Authorities are still working to determine what led to the crash, stressing that it is so early to say whether it was an accident, a failure, a mechanical failure, or something else. Now, emergency crews remain at the scene, securing the area and it's assisting the survivors. The incident has stunned the normally busy district, and investigators are expected to review the surveillance footage and question witnesses as they work to establish the cause. Now, moving on to Africa, Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has announced an inquiry into the killings during the recent elections that saw hundreds of deaths. Now, speaking at the opening session of the parliament, she expressed condolences to the families of the victims and vowed to investigate the violence. Hassan also called for leniency towards some protesters charged with treason, acknowledging that many youths were unaware of their actions. Now, the president directed law enforcement to assess the severity of the offences committed, offering a path for those who followed the crowd to move forward and erase their mistakes. Now, let's listen in to the president of Tanzania.
Serikali imechukua hatua ya kuunda tume ya kuchunguza yaliyotokea, yani inquiry commission, ili tujue kiini cha tatizo. Taarifa hiyo itatuongoza kujielekeza kwenye mazungumzo ya kuleta maelewano na amani.
Now, breaking updates from Brazil, indigenous activists disrupted the entrance to the COP30 climate summit in Belém, demanding that President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met them face to face. Now, a Mukrudu leader, Sandra Corab, led the chants, calling on Lula to hear their concerns about the stalled land demarcations, mining on indigenous territory, oil explorations, and what she describes as a threat to the future generation. Let's listen in to what she had to say.
Ele dá jeito, é presidente. Tem vários presidentes aqui, ele tem que vir. Vem, Lula, mostra a sua cara, vem aqui, a gente quer conversar com você. Pelo menos ouvir você. Porque esse presidente é 4 anos, 8 anos e volta para sua vida normal. E nós, como vamos ficar sem a nossa demarcação? E nós como vamos ficar com a mineradora na nossa terra, com o petróleo na nossa terra, com a venda do nosso rio? É a vida toda, é o futuro da nossa geração.
Meanwhile, the COP30 president says that he met the protesters alongside 2 ministers and received formal documents outlining their demands. He called their concerns strong and legitimate and stressed that COP30 aims to strengthen conciliation with indigenous peoples. The confrontation underscores the tensions between Brazil's climate ambitions and the indigenous communities who say their rights remain at risk even as the world gathers to discuss environmental protections. Let's listen in to what Andre had to say.
Então nós trouxemos eles aqui para ter diálogo com as 2 ministras e comigo, e foi diálogo muito construtivo, muito positivo, mas realmente eles têm preocupações muito fortes e muito legítimas e nos transmitiram 2 documentos que nós recebemos formalmente e que vamos procurar levar adiante todas as preocupações que eles têm. Eu esclareci que a COP30 é um exercício que favorece os indígenas, que fortalece as consultas aos povos indígenas e que, portanto, é uma conferência que deve ser apoiada e eu acho que houve uma reação muito positiva com relação a isso e as duas ministras também.
Now moving on with some breaking updates from the United Kingdom. Now doctors are striking outside St. Thomas Hospital in London as thousands of doctors in England begin a 5-day strike over pay and training posts. Now Health Secretary Wes Steering has said that the doctors going on the strike again and again over pay is inflicting pain and misery on patients. Now the Doctors Union, the British Medical Association, has said that they are still not paid enough and there are very few doctors left for training. Now the NHS says that nearly all services will keep running and patients should attend appointments unless advised otherwise. The latest walkout comes after Health Secretary Wes Steering launched arguably his strongest attack on the BMA. Addressing a conference of health managers this week, he called the union morally reprehensible and accused it of acting like a cartel attempting to hold the public and government to ransom. Now meanwhile, let's listen in to what some protesters had to say.
So we're out on strike for two reasons today. The first reason is because we are turning tens of thousands of doctors away from working in our NHS. So last year alone, we turned away 20,000 resident doctors from training jobs in our NHS. And on top of that, we are asking for restoration of our pay back to what it once was in 2008. And I think that's really important for residents across the country to value them and keep them working in our NHS.
So it's not a pay hike. What we're asking for is our pay to be restored. To put into perspective, a current doctor who just has recently qualified and they're fully qualified doctor, they're currently paid £18 an hour. We're asking for that to increase to £22 an hour.
Now, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto welcomed King Abdullah II of Georgia at the presidential palace in Jakarta for a bilateral meeting. Now, the two leaders are set to discuss key regional issues, including the Gaza peace process and strengthening defense and security cooperation between their nations. Their long-standing diplomatic ties, which were established back in 1951, continue to foster mutual collaboration. Now, during the visit, King Abdullah and President Prabowo inspected troops, greeted school students and exchanged views on opportunities for enhanced cooperation. Now, both leaders emphasized the importance of their continued partnership for regional peace and stability. Now, let's listen in to both these leaders.
Our two nations have enjoyed close relations since the establishment of our diplomatic ties 74 years ago, in October 1951.
And I know that in the discussions that we're having tonight and tomorrow, there are many new opportunities to strengthen the bond between Indonesia and Jordan.
Now, in a troubling development, Bakary Sambe, director of the Timbuktu Institute think tank in Dakar, has warned that Mali's capital, Bamako, could be facing an uncontroversial siege strategy. Now, he suggested that while a director took over by Al-Qaeda-linked Jihadist is unlikely, but the group is tactical of suffocating Bamako by blocking crucial transport routes that may be effective. Now, the Jihadist group JNIM has blocked major supply routes in southern and western Mali, preventing the flow of essential goods and fueling into the capital. Let's listen in.
Les djihadistes essayent d'étouffer Bamako à travers le blocus qu'on a connu dans la région de Caille. La région de Caille qui est très très importante au point de vue stratégique mais aussi au point de vue économique, renfermant plus de 80% de la production d'or du Mali. Donc ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, c'est une stratégie d'étouffement progressif de Bamako. Ce n'est pas tant vouloir prendre Bamako, mais laisser Bamako s'effondrer de l'intérieur. Je crois qu'il y a un échec patent de l'intervention russe au Mali. D'abord avec Wagner, qui a posé un certain nombre de problèmes avec les exactions qu'on a connues dans plusieurs régions du Mali, notamment au centre, mais aussi Africa Corp, qui est presque aujourd'hui aux abonnés absents. Si l'on sait que l'armée malienne essaye de monter en puissance, mais aujourd'hui la Russie est quasi absente et les soldats russes, on ne les voit, en tout cas d'Africa Corp, on ne les voit presque pas sur le terrain. Il y a eu récemment une communication assez claire de la part des États-Unis à réaffirmer le soutien au Mali, et y compris même peut-être sur le plan militaire. Je ne sais pas comment cela va se matérialiser, mais je verrais mal aujourd'hui une intervention occidentale ou internationale au Mali, sachant que ces puissances-là ont appris des leçons du passé.
Now, further breaking developments. Honduras is bracing for its November 30th presidential elections under a cloud of political tensions. Now, with the United States closely monitoring the progress and warning against any threats to democracy, with just 2 weeks until the general elections, the Central American nation is facing a political crisis as the governing left-wing party and the opposition exchange relentless accusations of plotting an electoral fraud. Now, recent polls show a three-way technical tie among the leading candidates, and television personalities Salvador Narcella of the right-wing Liberal Party, lawyer Rixi Moncada of the governing Liberal and Foundation Party, and businessman Narci Asfoura of the National Party. Escalating accusations have marked the campaign. Asfoura claimed that President Donald Trump's Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Under Secretary Christopher Landau are closely watching the electoral process and interpreting this as a message from Washington to respect democratic principles. Now, meanwhile, Gilberto Rios, a Liberal Party in wing of attempting to sabotage elections and with the US backing. Now, Honduran citizens remain divided on the integrity of the process. Angel Aetis expressed doubts about the transparency, pointing to conflicts within the nation's electoral council. Merchant Blanca Rosa called for honesty in their vote count, declaring that the people rule. Let's listen in.
Pues esperaríamos que todo se desarrolle en paz, en tranquilidad, ¿verdad? Que se respete la democracia y el voto popular. Cosas que no parecen muy probables o posibles, dado el ambiente que manejan a nivel del Consejo Nacional Electoral, con tanto conflicto, con tantos atrasos en los contratos, etcétera, ¿verdad?
Pues de preocupación no, porque ya se sabe que el que va a ganar, va a ganar. Y seamos honestos, que el que gane y que se quede, va. Y eso no tiene que estar pensando que cómo va a pasar, que no sé qué, si que tenemos que ser honestos y honrados, va. Que el que gane, gane, y que se vaya el que ya no está, el pueblo manda.
Now, retail giant Walmart has announced that CEO Doug McMillon will retire in January 2026, and John Furner, the current president and CEO of Walmart's US division, will succeed McMillon. Now, 53 years old, McMillon has served in the position since 2014. He will retire on January 31st, 2026, and further will take over as CEO on February 1st, 2026. Now, the announcement comes before the company is slated to release its quarterly earnings on November 20th. Now, in the second quarter of the year, Walmart topped sales estimates but missed adjusted earnings per share forecast for the first time since May 2022. Now, Furner, who is set to start as CEO on February 1st, 2026, has also been appointed to Walmart's board of directors effectively immediate. Now, the 51-year-old has served as president and CEO of Walmart US since 2019, overseeing the company's largest operations segment. Now, he began his Walmart career as an hourly associate in 1993 and previously served as president and CEO of Sam's Club US. Now, here's in fact what's coming out of CEO Doug McMillon.
everyone, it's Doug. I'll never forget my first summer at Walmart. It was 1984, I was a teenager, and I got a job unloading trucks at a distribution center. It was hard work, hot trailers and heavy boxes, but my teammates looked out for one another. We worked hard, but we also laughed a lot. By the end of the summer, I felt something I didn't really have the words for at the time. I belonged.
Well, with that, viewers, it's a wrap on the newsroom. Keep watching NewsX World for more